Hello.
Hello. Once again, Paul and I are ready for some ferocious debate over two topical issues.
This Sunday, more stores than ever will be flouting the laws against Sunday trading. With predictions of lower Christmas spending than in previous years, shops are risking prosecution to try to make the most of the final days before Christmas. The 1950 Shops Act restricts Sunday trading to a limited list of goods, such as fresh vegetables, alcohol and newspapers. Shops selling anything else cannot legally trade on a Sunday. So should the law be changed? We're joined by David Blackmore from the pressure group Keep Sunday Special and Roger Boaden from the Shopping Hours Reform Council. Mr. Boaden, many of the companies that support your council openly break the law every Sunday. Why should little people obey the law all the time and big companies be allowed to break the law when it suits them?
Well, the big companies represent about 1% of the total number of shops that break the law every single Sunday.
Why should they be selective about breaking the law?
Well, they're not selective, any more than local authorities or those who oppose are selective. In fact, they are extremely selective in terms of which shops they decide they'll prosecute. There are well over 60,000 shops open every single Sunday in England and Wales. Wherever you go, you'll find video shops, convenience stores, garage forecourts, garden centres, DIY stores. 99% of those are small businesses.
Why do you want to be able to trade on Sunday?
We see and detect substantial public demand. First of all, because of the way people shop currently. 2 million videos are rented every Sunday. Now, you can watch a video on a television screen quite legally in your own home. You can go to a cinema and watch it quite legally on a Sunday. But technically, according to the 1950 Shops Act, you can't go and rent one from your local video shop.
So it's greed. You see a demand and you want to satisfy it.
No, because why do you use the term greed?
Because Sunday is special. Sunday ought to be a time in which people are able to rest, enjoy themselves with their families. And what's shopping got to do with that?
Well, it was very interesting. One of the market research companies published some figures not very long ago, and they discovered that 58% of families now put shopping expeditions at top of their list.
Well, the national
and for a lot of families, Sunday is the only day on which they can go shopping as a family.
Well, the National Opinion Poll survey seems to say something else. You see, 74% of the people who answered that poll said it would be a shame if Sunday became just like any other day.
Oh, we don't
74% said it'd be nice to have one day a week when the streets are quiet. 91% said that all retailing employees should have a legal right not to work on Sundays.
And
those people are right, aren't they?
I have no argument with those who say that shop workers should have a legal right not to work. We want shop workers protected. But what about those who want to work on a Sunday? What about those who choose to work on a Sunday? Do they not have some rights too?
You say you want to protect shop workers. Yes. Are you telling me that the career prospects of a manager or an ordinary shop floor worker who refuses to work on a Sunday in a firm like B&Q, which flagrantly breaks the law, would be the same as one who's willing to?
Yes.
That's simply not true, isn't it? You're being naive.
I'm not being naive, because I know of examples where precisely that has happened. In B&Q, for example, there is a gentleman who's been promoted several times, a Methodist lay preacher who's never worked on a Sunday, and he's been able to make that choice inside that particular company.
Jeffrey.
Mr. Blackmore, can I start by saying that 6 out of 10 people now shop on a Sunday. That's, I think that's correct in saying that's 66% of the people who do shop. Don't you think it's time that we scrapped a quite ridiculous law?
Well, it depends from which standpoint you are talking about. Shopping...
I'm talking from the shopper's standpoint.
Well, I'm a shopper, and sometimes I can go out on a Sunday and quite legally buy my newspaper. If you call that Sunday shopping, then I suppose it is. But I think what you have to realise, Geoffrey, is that we're talking about the whole of the nation. What we're talking about in this dispute is turning Sundays into Saturdays. And I think that's where the people drew the line 4 years ago when Parliament defeated the Shops Bill. And if anything, we found opinion has hardened in the direction of, yes, we want reform, we want the anomalies changed, we want the confusions taken out of the law, but we detect no popular feeling that the whole of the legislative framework should be scrapped, which is what our opponents want.
Well, where do you stand on the following? You can't buy fish and chips on a Sunday, but you can go to a fish shop and buy fish. Where do you stand on you can buy pornographic books, but you can't buy the Bible.
Well, apart from disagreeing with you on detail, because you shouldn't be able to buy a pornographic magazine on any day of the week, especially Sunday, but having said that, we do not support the list of goods, never have done, because we think there are greater freedoms at stake than just the freedom to shop. You see, we do believe in freedom and enhancing choice, provided that does not conflict with the freedoms of others. And there are very important freedoms. There is the freedom of staff, because it's not just shop workers that are affected, it's transport, distribution, security, other employees in local government, because there are so many other things that are needed to make retailing work. Not to mention the fundamental freedoms enjoyed to worship together, and many, many employees are today, and will be this Sunday, put in the invidious position of having to choose between job and church.
Can I ask, then, if you feel so strongly on this? I think it's understood to be working well in Scotland. It's not the law of Scotland, and they are not asking to change back to your rather sort of introvert view. Why should they have these privileges in Scotland, whereas we south of the border are to be treated in some different way?
Well, I'm glad you've raised Scotland, because it is a chestnut which is regularly trotted out as if Scotland took a conscious decision to deregulate. They didn't. They were simply omitted from the 1950 law because there was a well-acknowledged consensus that the old Scottish Sabbath would hold good. They were omitted, therefore, and now...
They're more godly than we are, aren't they?
They were expected to be, but the problem is that the English companies, the English multiples, have now been going up to Scotland in droves and forcing the rest of the Scottish companies to open to follow suit.
Well, thank you for laying that old chestnut to rest. You can always rely on Geoffrey to bring out the old chestnut. But I want to pursue with you, Mr. Boaden, at this point. You see, you claim that you're for choice. Isn't the most important choice that the shopper currently has, although it's threatened, the choice between the small local shop and the big retail out-of-town mall outlet? And aren't you going to, by opening these malls on a Sunday, further squeeze the small shopkeeper?
No, because our particular proposals, our particular compromise, which we put forward, would give all-day freedom to the small shopkeeper whilst restricting the larger shops to a limited period.
Then why is it that government ministers keep on telling you as a lobby who claim to be for Sunday training to get your act together simply because you can't get your members to agree on what serves the interests of both the small and the large retailer?
Actually, that's not true, because if you care to look back at what various ministers have said, you will find a series of ministerial quotes which have welcomed the proposals that we put forward, have gone down the route of saying this is the kind of route the government wants to go on several occasions.
Can I just ask you, David, too, going back a little, because I can't work out what you really do and what you don't want. I mean, am I allowed to watch football on a Sunday, cricket on a Sunday, go to the theatre on a Sunday? What am I allowed to do on a Sunday?
Well, it's not up to me to tell you to do anything. What we're suggesting is there is a place in the argument for all people's interests to be considered. And regrettably, see, Roger is coming out with the old baloney about the small shop. It's actually a sop to some of the small shops. And unfortunately, the vast majority of small shops
David, you believe your own propaganda,
want to be under that sort of pressure or compulsion. And what he ignores is that ministers have on a number of occasions. In fact, the very moment the Prime Minister was speaking this week in the House of Commons, his own minister in the Lords was saying that even though there is not a consensus, and it includes the Shopping Hours Reform Council's proposals, nonetheless the law must be obeyed in the interim. And I would just remind Roger, I mean, he knows the previous Prime Minister very well. She said only 6 years ago the law should be obeyed until Parliament, and only Parliament, decides it should be changed. Now, you're not on record yet, Roger, as condemning the lawbreakers. Have they purchased your time as well as your conscience?
Oh, David, don't talk baloney yourself. This is really rather silly.
Well, can we have an answer?
Well,
do you support the rule of law?
My dear David, just listen. You choose to only go after 1% of those shops open and trading illegally on a Sunday. You choose to ignore the other 99%, and yet you say you are in favour of the law being obeyed. If that is true, everybody should obey the law according to your rules, but you don't stick by your own rules. So stop challenging me on that basis.
Not at all. You've still evaded the question as to whether the Shopping Hours Reform Council is or is not in favour of the rule of law. I hope one day before Christmas we might actually know that.
You know
but we're not selective, as you well know.
Yes, you are extremely selective.
Well, let this be the day. Are you for or against law breaking? Do you condemn the law breakers?
The discussion.
Let him answer the question. Do you condemn lawbreakers or not?
No, I do not condemn the lawbreakers, nor do I condemn...
Then you're selective. You were former aide to the Conservative Party are selective in whether or not you decide to obey laws.
Condone Lord Brainerd.
David, can you just answer one simple question among all this marvellous...
Well, I'm glad we've got
Wait a minute. Under
this
all this marvellous stuff we're getting out of Paul, which we get week in and week out, just ask a simple question, without any of your long, that isn't the point, Geoffrey stuff. When they actually opened those big stores on Sunday last week, isn't it true to say that they were overwhelmed with people who actually wanted to work on that day?
Isn't that the fact?
Oh,
the very reverse is true.
Let me
Give him the facts, David. Give him the facts. David, give him the facts.
Tell you that from September this year, our office has been inundated with staff of Woolworths and Kingfisher and others who have been planning this Christmas offensive for months.
I thought Woolworths and Kingfisher were the same shop.
When are you going to identify some of these
manager of Woolworths who
people?
took early retirement rather than suffer the hassle of head office pressure to open this
David,
Sunday.
can I ask you something?
And that is on the public record.
The Co-op is often claimed by you as being one of your major supporters. Are you aware that a Co-op store was injuncted in the High Court today from
Yes,
Exeter?
I am, and they have only themselves to blame because I uphold the rule of law. I have no problem with that.
Do you still believe they should support you?
Yes, and they still do, but they are not. I do not defend lawbreakers.
Opening all over the country?
They're not. I think they are now coming. They are now coming to realise that it is no way to change the law.
Roger,
that's not the
Why
point.
are you pleased that more and more people are breaking the law?
Don't
you see that as a threat to the rule of law?
I am not pleased. I am simply saying that we have a situation where this particular law has never been observed.
Quite right.
It has never been enforced properly.
I think, Roger, now...
Very few local authorities... Look, if there are 60,000, and I know there are well over 60,000 shops open every Sunday and trading illegally, there are...
No, they are not trading illegally.
But that's an argument, Mr. Boaden, with respect, that's an argument for enforcing the law, not for abolishing it. Are you saying that if a law is unfair and burdensome and not supported, people shouldn't obey it?
You haven't been listening to him, Paul.
Then what point are you saying?
I'm simply saying that you have a situation... We would have no problem if the law were enforced evenly, right across the board, by every local authority. But you see, David and his colleagues are pushing, pressurising, threatening local authorities to prosecute 1%.
That's a call, it seems to me, to the local authorities to clamp down on all lawbreakers.
You don't have to be in favour of breaking the law in order to want to change it.
We have news today that they're doing just that. But I think the argument we've heard so far, the local authorities...
A handful, David.
What we're actually saying is that really the arguments of the Shopping Hours Council seem to me to be the ghost of Christmas past. And it really is quite deplorable that the ideas that they put forward are nothing more than a superstore charter. And it's quite contrary to our own rest proposals, which have the endorsement of the vast majority of retailers.
The ghost of Christmas past. The ghosts of Christmas past. Thank you, David Blackmore. Thank you, David Blackmore. And Roger Boaden.
Thank you.
Well, Sunday for me is a special day. It ought not to be a day in which materialism once again comes in and destroys the opportunity that people have to do something other than shop. I mean, to have a shopping mall culture, I think, is an abrogation of a full and rich cultural life.
I don't disagree with you that Sunday's a special day, but I think it's a bit short-sighted of you to imagine, now that we have many working wives and people working hard through the week, that perhaps it isn't a convenience to have certain shops open on a Sunday. And the other interesting thing about it was, when it actually happens, only 5% of the shops in Britain actually open. 95% don't even bother. So I think you're getting a bit worked up, Paul. Just a little bit worked up.
I think it's a very important issue. Sundays is special. Let's keep it that way. Let's keep it that way.